Paranormal Karen, she's so spooky. Paranormal Karen, funny too. Paranormal Karen, she's so spooky. Oh, and did I mention she's funny too? Yeah, cha-cha-cha.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to Paranormal Karen. It is, you know what? I don't know when it is because I'm taping all my podcasts way ahead of time. It's a strange year and I'm so excited. So I'm just going to throw out some dates there. October 17th, I am in Ann Arbor, Michigan, at the, Comedy Showcase. Ann Arbor Comedy Showcase. I believe that's what it is. Big things coming up in 2020. I am doing my first sort of Paranormal Karen show alone, psychic stand-up in a theater, May 15th in Miami. So people get ready. I'm going to have the link in there. It's in a theater. It's going to be great. And I'm looking for some other dates next year. I will be headlining Brad Garrett's Comedy Club in February of 2020. All kinds of things coming up. But today's guest, every time I have him on, you text me, you tweet me, you email me how much you love Jeff Thill. And so I'm just going to have him on until we have completely drained his brain of all the information he has. Jeff, how are you?
I was, as you were saying that, I was trying to visualize how many stories and how many hours it would take before I finally had drained my brain.
Oh my God, well, I have time.
I imagine that by the time we got to that point, something new would have already happened. So I could probably still keep going.
I know. And it's like I know it's nothing and it's not a big deal yet, but like when I pitch a paranormal show, I'm like, Jeff is my team. Jeff is in. So hopefully we'll be doing this on TV someday, but who knows?
Yeah, that'd be fun.
So last time I spoke with you, we talked about, I'm going to tell you my little story. And then, I want to talk about, alien DNA in humans. And what happened to me, there's a woman named Tana Newberry, who I just reached out with again, to talk about, I was at a conference and I sort of did what I call a kamikaze interview with her where I jumped on her and threw a microphone on her. So it was a little choppy, but she did a alien reading on me. And, she actually said there's a race of aliens called Palladians. They're a peace-loving people with smooth skin and they're beautiful. You're not one of those.
That's awesome.
I know. She didn't quite say it like that, but I was laughing. But she said, she did this whole reading and she said that I was from Orion and she handed me a book. And this was what sort of got me into the alien thing. She handed me a book and she said, why don't you look up what goes on with the people from Orion? And I was like, okay, this is going to be like newspaper astrology where it's kind of me and it's kind of not. And the first thing they said was weird blue eyes, only aliens with sense of humor, and vegan. And then my head exploded because that's pretty specific, and that's me.
Yeah, that is interesting.
And,
did you say that did you say the only alien species with a sense of humor? Is that what I heard? Sorry.
Or it was either they had a sense of humor or that it was more prevalent with them. But I thought it said,
Gotcha.
I got to get her on and get the book. Only aliens with sense of humor. And actually, the more I read, it's not that they're not peace loving, but they have been persecuted. My people have been persecuted, Jeff. And
you do come across that way.
I know. I got a little chip on my shoulder about my Orion aliens, but they were warriors and fighters because they had been attacked so many times. So they weren't. They kind of described the Palladians as being very peace loving and let's all get along, and my people are kind of like, well, maybe. But you come from a whole different point here.
Well, can I just say though, really quick, that if you're Palladian, and from what you're explaining, right, they're extremely beautiful and smooth skinned. I've always felt like it's so much easier to be chill and have a great outlook on life, right? Peace and love and happiness when you're good looking. Am I wrong?
You're exactly right.
That is just really, and they're super amazingly good looking, stunningly good looking, and they're happy and they want people to get along. That's crazy.
Yes. And they also, I always feel like when she told me that, I was like, so in the alien world, I'm still not one of the popular kids. Still not in that group.
No. You're clearly the lapdog of the of the universe.
And I always feel like, I'm sure that Halle Berry has had some horrible racist things happen in her life.
But she's obviously plebeian.
Yes, she's obviously beautiful. A few more doors have opened for her that have not opened for me.
That's right.
But anyways, that was my first experience that kind of launched me into all this alien stuff. And I think we talked about this last time. And you said, yes, I believe our DNA is from aliens.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. And that's, again, every crazy sounding statement that comes out of my mouth, it's hard to defend when I'm at a barbecue with, people that are, have never heard crazy things come out of someone's mouth like that, except on TV or in some weird documentary. But I will say that in my defense, Karen, in our defense, I should say,
yes.
It's not from a lack of research. And I know people out there that might be skeptics are thinking, really, research, Jeff? What research could you have possibly done to come to that conclusion? But there are some fascinating facts, and there's lots of really interesting historical data that suggests that not just me, Jeff Thill, or Karen, we're not just super unique, that really every living human today is a hybrid, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And it's basically DNA from hominids that were, ape-like and walking around on the planet at the time, and aliens. And then the rest of it is junk DNA, which is a classic signature of genetic manipulation, which all humans are covered in junk DNA. So we all have the telltale signature in our genome of manipulation.
And you know what else? I did not know this, but I had a friend that did that Ancestry.com, which I will not do because I think that's just government information being gathered. But
Karen, like when we were first hanging out back in the 90s at the Comedy Store, if you said that, you would just sound kind of crazy. But now flash forward to the year 2019, where people just willingly give every single nuance of their lives and food and who I like and dislike and what I'm doing today and where I'm going and what I'm eating willingly to the government, let alone what they can collect on you. So you are certainly not crazy for saying that.
Right. And, I have to say, I saw the funniest meme the other day, and this is not, it was Howard Cosell standing next to, who's the runner? Who's with the Kardashians? Bruce Jenner. And
Bruce Jenner, sure.
Standing with Bruce Jenner and OJ, and it has Howard Cosell saying, "Folks, I'm looking into the future, and you're not going to believe what I'm seeing."
It is so true. I would say that those are two really good examples of what the hell
is good.
Yeah,
right.
Nobody would have believed that. Yeah,
right. And also a weird question, but the wasn't everybody did the aging app on Facebook, and wasn't that a Russian company?
It turned out to be, yeah. So Jeff Thill, for instance, fell for it, and now they have a perfect fingerprint of my face. So it will come as no surprise. In fact, I totally deserve it when I'm wanted for a triple homicide in the Ukraine.
Well, it's very funny because I think they will not be able to arrest anyone in Hollywood who are already worried about aging, like me. I was not gonna, I don't need to see it get worse. I really don't. So, and that's the other one, Clear, where they got your eyeball now. No, not doing it.
Yeah. But that AI was absolutely amazing. I mean, when I looked at it at 12 o'clock at night, super bored, right before going to bed, I fell for it and did the, I'll do the trial version of this app and what does Jeff Thill look like? And I even made myself look as good as I could. I did the classic selfie from 3 feet above with my face stretched out to make myself look as young as possible. And good Lord, heaven help the world that has to look upon my face 30 years from now. Good God. It was startling.
Well, I think they'll come up with the American version of that, where they then give you the plastic surgery app, and the guy comes in and goes, "We'll pull a little here, and we'll pull a little there." Nothing to worry
Right.
about.
Yeah.
But
Oh, man, I'd like that. Yeah.
so great. So you always do your research. I think that's why everybody loves you, because the moon landing thing was hard. And I said to people, just listen. And everybody was like, oh my God.
You know, Karen, it's interesting. I'm so really, that makes me feel great that you gave me a forum here to talk about this stuff, and you actually got some really positive remarks back, and people at least raised an eyebrow and thought, that's interesting what Jeff Thill said. That's really cool. I have to say, though, out of the blue, I got more than a couple of instant messages and Facebook messages from people that, although they're Facebook friends, these are the Facebook friends that you really haven't ever spoken a word to since high school, that somehow ended up on the outer periphery of your Facebook strata somehow, right? And so a couple of these people, they were very hurt and about the moon landing episode, and they gave me these messages where it's like, hey, kind of like, how dare you? And I can't believe that you have slipped into this realm of madness, and I'm so sorry when I see normally healthy people and rational humans degrade themselves and slip into this quagmire of insanity almost. It's like, hey, first of all, I kind of barely knew you, but I'm super sorry that I offended anyone in any way, shape, or form. But it did remind me that we're talking about belief systems here, and it really is tough on people to even think about looking beyond what you have been taught or know or think you know,
right?
Let alone start to see things that shatter that looking glass. And then I guess just be kind of tough enough to go, screw it, man. I already took the red pill. Let's see what happens. Right. And I don't know. Not everybody can do it, right?
Oh, well, I'm sorry about that. I guess we'll call that the...
Oh, no, don't be sorry at all. Okay. No, they weren't. But I could tell there was some heartbreak on the other end of these messages. And I thought, interesting. No, to me, it's kind of fascinating.
You know what else I wonder? I wonder if they listened to the episode.
Well, a couple of the people, and it was varied. One person, it was just sort of, you could tell they were mildly annoyed. And then it went all the way from that to, I think the third message was somebody felt like they kind of got deeply hurt somehow. And I got the feeling that at least a couple of them did listen to the whole thing. Yeah, that they were making some points throughout what we had talked about. So, and I've learned a long time ago, Karen, and I'm sure you've learned the same thing. You don't go point counterpoint with someone whose belief system you just, attacked. There's no point in that. It doesn't ever go anywhere. No one's ever going to convince anyone else. Right. Yeah.
And you made such great points then that if they're not going to get it from that podcast, they're not going to get it, because no, completely. And I always start with a disclaimer. And by the way, I did put a disclaimer, which when I posted the episode on social media, I did put in the disclaimer that, this is definitely a version of a red pill. And if you take this, there might be some mind shattering paradigms that will have to shift in your brain. And please be aware. So I feel like I did at least warn people, I don't feel like it's 100% our fault, Karen. No. And you know what else? I think there's actually like veins that go further into things like, hey, they were heroes. Like, I don't know when America is going to get over heroes. Like we want heroes, and then we build them up, and then we knock them down because they're not perfect. But it's, I don't know. Well, anyway, so if anyone's going to get offended, please don't email Jeff.
No, it's okay. No, I mean, and my point in saying all that wasn't that, I'm actually totally fine with that. In fact, I'm fascinated when people are at least interested enough that they will give it a listen. And I always have to first congratulate them for that. Secondly, understanding that, yes, I know it sounds crazy. And then third, that's okay, man. Of course you have that opinion, and it would take me months to try to convince you otherwise. And I would have to be whispering in someone's ear for months before they could finally come around if they're that far down the other end of the hole. Right. So, it's okay. No, it's all good.
Yeah. And lastly, I get so many letters from listeners, and I forget because, you're a comedian, I'm a comedian, we're out there. There isn't really a limit. There isn't a roof that a glass ceiling or anything. Because when I say I was at a UFO conference, it gets a big laugh, but people know I was at a UFO
Right.
conference.
Of
But
course.
I forget when you work a regular job or your IT or something. They really like the podcast because it makes them feel not crazy. Like I can't talk
Right.
about this here, but this is it. So yeah, we're still transitioning. So, whatever. We're
Sure.
good. We'll never,
Totally agree. Yeah.
none of us are going back to that first moon landing, but we can learn, what we learn, which is why you're here to teach us more.
Well, and nobody's opinion changes what happened, during the Apollo mission. So it doesn't, you can talk all you want from either side. Whatever happened. So yeah, that's all part of history. But is it the history that you were, aware of, or is there something different there? That's what I'm always fascinated by. And it's probably because I was born a little bit of a smartass, and I think all of us comics have a little smartassery in us.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm a little bit of a button pusher for sure. And it's just weird though, when you start to push buttons and then you go, wait a minute, this isn't real, is it? Oh my God, is there something really to this? And then you start to pull on that thread, and by gosh, it's like, man, truth really is stranger than fiction. It's shocking what you can learn if you just keep an open mind.
Yeah, and also two things. First of all, astrology right now. For people that are listening, I have this I watched this fabulous astrologer, Joni Paltry, and I'm trying to get her on the show. She's talking about how right now we're in a truth-telling time where the truth is coming up, and it's stranger than we think. And I don't know if this has to do with the Jeffrey Epstein thing, but I kind of think it does, that people are going to be amazed at how deep that went, or whatever's coming out. It's all, it's all being revealed right now. But I think we are, I remember, I don't think you're old enough to remember this, but you remember the comics in the 80s that were talking about how someday you're going to have a phone and you're going to be able to call the guy in front of you, and everybody would laugh and laugh. And now it's here. But I'll never forget, George Carlin had a line where the audience was going crazy and he said, you don't need me. And they went more crazy, and he goes, you don't need me. And then he goes, listen, even if there's going to be a guy after me. When I go, there's going to be somebody just like me after me. Even if the whole world burnt down and there were 7 people and they went to rebuild, there would still be one guy that just went, that's not right. And
right.
That's who we are. We just go, that's not right. But oh my God, we've chatted before we even got to our topic to the first break. So, all right. Hang on, everybody. Hang on for the next minute, and then we're going to upset you about your DNA. Who do tarot readers go for tarot readings? They go to Melissa Sonova at melissasonova.com. She gave me the best reading a couple of months ago that is still resonating and helping me out now. She is authentic and to the point. You loved her on the podcast. She is the no BS tarot reader. She also has a tarot class online right now. Check it out. Just watching the promo, you will see how much fun you are going to have while you learn. Also, check out her book, which is always right beside me when I'm doing my readings or my tarot card for me in the morning. It is called Kitchen Table Tarot, and you will love it. Melissa Sonova, that's MELISSACYNOVA. Check her out. Okay, so now on topic. So Jeff, sort of tell me where this research or because I agree with the junk DNA. That's junk DNA. We have more of it than we know, don't we?
We do, and for those out there that don't know what we're talking about, please don't look at me to explain too deeply. I'm definitely not a geneticist or a biologist, but we all have the internet and Siri and even books, if you will. And so look it up, but you will soon discover that junk DNA is just a leftover signature of sections of your DNA makeup that don't actually do anything. They're not actually assigned to anything, that can be determined, right? So it's just sort of like, of the countless base pairs that are in your DNA and your genetic makeup. These are the ones that don't appear to do anything or go anywhere, as if you were the guy that builds carnival rides, right? And you finally got to Bakersfield, and there you go. You built the zipper, and you had a whole bunch of bolts left over. And good luck, right? It's the same kind of thing, man, So we're all kind of riding the zipper, and we can hold together here, but we do have some extra nuts and bolts that don't seem to go anywhere, and that is part of our genetic makeup. And it is absolutely a classic sign of genetic manipulation. So when we, here on Earth, us humans, when we do genetic manipulation to create a different kind of, a different breed of this or a different kind of that when it comes to plants or animals or experiments that are legal, the same thing happens. There's junk DNA that's left over. Nothing we can do about it. So the fact that humans have it is quite interesting. You would think in God's perfect plan that there wouldn't be a bunch of junk DNA, but there it is.
Would this be like, this is a weird example, but you know how they say eventually we're not going to need two nostrils, so that little thing in between there is going to go. So that would actually say we're to that point and we don't have that little space there. Whatever made that happen would be the junk DNA that we don't really need to know about, kind of?
No, now that's a good question. I guess I don't know the exact answer to that. But basically what's happening is you have a whole bunch of raw material for your genetic code, but not all of it needs to be used. Now that's a great question, Karen. I don't know what happens if you don't need something. Does your appendix just become junk DNA later and it doesn't really go anywhere or do anything? Good question. That I don't know.
That could be more of an evolution question, but maybe the records of it would be in the DNA. Like these humans used to have.
No, totally correct. And by the way, part of this whole story, and I wouldn't want to get too off track with evolution, but the one mind-blowing thing that I learned after reading a pretty amazing book by a gentleman named Lloyd Pye, P-Y-E, and the book is called Everything You Know Is Wrong. Mm-hmm. And it's sort of a history, an anthropological history of man, very scientific. If you can get through the whole book, your brain will be blown. And it basically says in no uncertain terms that there was never enough time in the Earth's history to create from the primordial soup man. So man doesn't really directly come from apes and things like that. We've never actually found the missing link. And according to, the ancient Sumerians, these are one of the first civilizations known to mankind, the Sumerians. There's a good reason why you're never going to find the missing link between man and ape. You'll find things that are close, but not quite there.
Okay.
And the reason is because we are hybrids.
Okay. Right. And a quick recap. First of all, if when we see the first person that has lost the middle of their nose, please don't make fun of them. That's the first thing I want to say because we're all going there.
That's right. I was trying to picture that. I was trying to think, is there ever going to be a world where having one nostril versus two will ever be considered sexy or normal?
I know, but we're gonna.
And isn't it funny that we're so coded to care about someone's nostrils that it would just be like, there's just no way you could ever see yourself ending up with someone that has one nostril. It's just super gross.
Right, but don't make fun of them. They've got their own issues. Okay, so basically what it is that the God created the earth in what amount of days? 6 days. No way it could happen. We had to be put here.
Yeah, no, and let's also not forget that let's go with facts, not even Jeff's crazy talk here. It's a fact that there have been 4, maybe even 5, basically all life on Earth practically ending. Not quite all life, obviously, but we've had 4 to 5 catastrophic, world enders, right? With the asteroids and things that have hit the Earth and just wiped everything clean. So even if you could imagine that you could go all the way from a eukaryote all the way to a human, and then what? Everything gets reset, and then you have to start over again, and then it gets reset again. You got to start over again. It gets reset again. You got to start over again. So it's really hard to make it to human. So what I learned very quickly was that evolution is real. Of course it is. We see it all around us. But here's the thing. It's what we call microevolution versus macroevolution. So for those at home that, probably know what micro versus macro is, but let me go a little further and explain. Microevolution is what we witness all the time. Hey, that bird developed a different kind of beak. And this really tiny horse eventually became a big horse. And these fish and that thing adapted over time. And sometimes we can even see examples of stuff adapting right in front of us, right in front of our eyes. They're adapting. But at the end of the day, it started as a horse and it ended as a horse. It started as a bird and it's still a bird, so on and so forth. So a whale is in the ocean and it's a mammal, and it used to crawl on the land, but it's still a mammal. Okay, it's not like a reptile turned into a mammal. Okay, and I know the first thing people will say is, Jeff, you're wrong. There are some dinosaur birds that are somewhere between a bird and a feathered animal, right? Mm-hmm. A bird and a reptile, excuse me. So there are tiny little examples that suggest that they had one trait or the other from two different species. But let's put it this way, folks. If man had started from a completely different species, such as a monkey or an ape or something lower, that means that everything that we see in front of us is somehow transitioning from one species to another. That means that there would be millions of examples that we could look at right now of something turning from one species into another, sharing both species, right, in its DNA. And there's zero examples of that. The platypus is a weird animal, true. So, again, that's just the beginning of it. So long story short is evolution happens, but it happens on a micro level.
Two questions before we get to macro. You said 4 or 5 times the Earth was wiped out by meteors and stuff. I
think it was at least, and forgive me if I'm wrong. Somebody might say, "Ha, you're wrong, Jeff. It was only 3 times." But I thought there was at least 4 to 5 sort of Earth changers where it was either dramatic,
Okay, you mean like the dinosaurs went away?
Completely, right? Okay. So giant asteroids, meteorites hitting the Earth, wiping out, huge clouds that wipe out, green life and shut down
for a minute, I was like, did I miss these? What happened? Okay, so that's micro. Now, so when you're talking macro, would that be like...
Macroevolution basically means, you guys, one species turning into another species, which is what humans would have had to have done to become humans, right?
Like Mothman.
So the fact that we see no evidence of it, not only do we see no evidence of it in the living record in front of us of, again, how could there ever be all these different species? How could they have ever come from one eukaryote or a prokaryote before that? If there weren't, in the current record looking around you right now, why would you not see millions of different examples of one species still in the process of evolving into another? You can't just somehow magically have it happen. And by the way, just to get down to the micro level, a prokaryote, the little organism in the primordial soup, turning into a much more complex, microorganism called a eukaryote. They are so infinitely different from each other in terms of complexity that it's often been said that just turning one of those into the other is about the same chances as a tornado going through a junkyard and accidentally assembling a 747.
Wow.
So people don't really understand how complex, the human system is, and any animal system and plant system really is when you get down to the micro level. So, yeah. So again, what does all this mean? It means that something, right, must have seeded, for some reason, the ape-like creatures that were here on Earth, right? And who knows how they got here, but whatever, just depends on your religion or non-religion. But the Sumerians say, well, we know exactly what happened, right? So the Sumerians have these kind of like hieroglyphs, but they're called cuneiforms, and they're in clay tablets, kind of like you'd see hieroglyphs inside of an Egyptian tomb.
And I'm going to stop you for 1 second. I want to go back
ahead.
to animals and macro for just 1 second.
Sure.
I don't think we could handle that because I think that's what Mothman is. Mothman is a macro. That's a combination of two things. That's a person and a thing. And also, when you talk macro, I may be way off topic, but you know how we keep finding this animal we thought was extinct just popped up? 12 of them have been found. Like, that's a odd. Is that like even like a kind of a macro, like they weren't here and then they're here kind of thing?
Oh, no. I mean, I know the macroevolution concept is just a species ultimately over time transforms into a different species. That's all. Okay. Now, a species disappearing from the known plant and animal kingdom and then being rediscovered later, it would still be the same thing that it was before. It wouldn't have changed species, but it like the coelacanth would be a good example, right? The coelacanth is a fish that is hundreds of millions of years old and was discovered back in something like the 30s or something off the coast of Madagascar. And they've been like, oh, yeah, we've been catching these things deep in the water for years. Like, good Lord. That's a coelacanth. Those things have been gone for, again, hundreds of millions of years. But now we know that they're real and they've been documented, and there you go, right?
And coelacanth soup for everyone.
Now, coelacanths are a great example of not even zero evolution. They've been the same like crocodiles for hundreds of millions of years, right? So
wow. Okay, so back to the Sumerians. They weren't hieroglyphics. They were called.
So I think the mistake that a lot of scientists and anthropologists and biologists and what have you, people from the scientific community, I think one of the big mistakes that are often made is when you look back at the Greeks and the Romans and the Toltecs and the Mayans and the Incans and the Sumerians and the Egyptians, the list goes on and on and on. They all have their own version of what is termed mythology. But they all have creation stories which are thought of by us in the modern Western world as myths. These people these are just fanciful tales and imaginary things that happen to these people. Of course, there's no Zeus with a thunderbolt, and of course, beings don't come down from the sky and rule over men with fantastical technology. I mean, that's crazy talk, right? So it must have just been in their imagination, and they're primitive people, and God bless them, and pat them on the head and move on. Somebody finally said, when it came to the Sumerian cuneiforms, he said, hey, this gentleman's name, by the way, was Zachariah Sitchin, and he said, what if we didn't treat this like a myth? What if just for 1 second we suspend disbelief and we actually listen to what the Sumerians are saying about how mankind got here on Earth? Wouldn't that be fascinating? And the story that unfolds is exactly the story of how humans got here and why you'll never, ever find a missing link. There is no missing link. The missing link are literally, according to the Sumerians, a advanced race of beings that came down from the heavens and created man, which they called the Adamu, right? Mm-hmm. Or Adam. Mm. And their scientific community was all female, and they were called the Doma, and they actually have cuneiforms, just like the Egyptians do, showing serpents intertwined. Okay, and today that exact symbol is the symbol for the medical world, right? We've all seen the medical symbol in front of buildings and stuff, right? The two serpents intertwined.
Yeah, it's actually the Two of Cups also for our tarot fans.
It's also the double helix of DNA.
Wow.
So the Sumerians, and this is what got Zachariah Sitchin's attention, were hyper specific about how man got here. These people came from a planet known as the 12th planet, and it only comes into kind of closer to the Earth in our solar system once every 3,600 years on a giant orbit. According to Sumerian mythology, their atmosphere in their world was dying. They needed massive amounts of gold to put into their outer atmosphere of their planet to save their atmosphere. Now, that's pretty advanced knowledge for Sumerians. And by the way, they're right. If the ozone layer were to deplete or get super thin, one way would be to take metal flakes such as gold and in particle form, shoot it into the outer atmosphere, and that would actually block the harmful sun's rays and this and that and the other.
Really?
And so interesting that they would even think about that. So massive amounts of gold. That's what the Sumerians were after.
So
and
Trump's,
it's not
Trump's golden.
Excuse me. Not the Sumerians. They called this race the Anunnaki or Anunnaki. I always say it the wrong way. And they're very specific, right? So these things came down. Step one, we need a slave race. We need some things that are just smart enough to do what we say, but not so smart that they're going to go against us and start thinking their own thoughts and getting kind of, wily. So they, according to the Sumerians, they take the kind of ape-like creatures that are walking around and they mix it with their own DNA to create the Adamu, the Adam, or man and woman. And the slave race, I love this part, is sent to areas that have been identified that have gold. And the slave race goes into the gold mines and, digs down into these veins. And it's very tedious work, and it requires, little hands to get in there and mine for gold. And that's what they do. Generation after generation after generation is mine for gold for the Anunnaki. Now, here's the interesting thing. Those exact gold mines, they exist. And they're exactly where the Sumerians said they were. And by the way, some of the mines are nowhere near where anyone from Sumeria could have ever gotten to. Wow. So how they could have had knowledge of it is impossible to know. They also showed the entire solar system, all 9 planets on their cuneiforms, including the moons of the planets. Not only that, but they knew that the planets, some of them had elliptical and some of them had spherical orbits, and the orbits of the moons. Now, keep in mind, folks, it was only like in the last 100 years that we even discovered some of the planets that we now know today, let alone the moons around the planets, right?
We didn't have a telescope, right?
Right. So even if they had a telescope, it would have been pretty hard. So they had absolute verified knowledge of our solar system that there's just no way they could have had. Easy to ignore on its own, but when you start putting all the pieces together, it's a fascinating story. And again, it's a little bit humiliating too, right? Just like we just learned that Karen is the lapdog race of the galaxy, one of the lowly Orions. We are nothing but monkey gold miners, all of us. So there you go.
Which sounds like a punk band.
I was actually in a band, and they let me write conspiracy lyrics for the band, and that is one of our songs. If you wanna go on YouTube and type in "Monkey Gold Miner" by the J Rods, you're more than welcome to listen to my little silly story with punk music.
Oh, that's awesome! And hold on one second. That's a perfect break. Hold on, we're going to hold and find out more about the cuneiforms, which just makes me think that's a uniform for someone cooking quinoa. Okay, folks, we'll be right back. Psychic medium and buddy of mine, Terry Huberman, is with me today. Terry, you've given me so many great readings and healings, and now you've got everything together in one package. Tell me about that.
I sure do. So this package has energy healings, readings, and coaching.
Coaching, that's the best. And people, they buy the package. You give them coaching once a week?
Yeah, so we meet online once a week, and in between, there's support as well.
And who would this be for?
This is really for folks who are in indecision, needing to get into their intuition because they're blocked or stuck. They need to move forward. And so we explore what the root causes of the problems are.
And helps them get out of their own way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Terrific. And what can they expect from this?
Sure. So moving from anxiousness to confidence, accessing their freedom, joy, and security, and really being in alignment with themselves so they have that clear direction, so they know, aha, this is what I need to do next to reach my goals.
So now there's something that's free so people can talk to you and see if this is for them.
Yeah, absolutely. On my website, terryhuberman.com, there is a page where you can click, and it's the intuitive coaching package. And there is a button there that says schedule a free call. So you go ahead, schedule it. We'll get on a call and you can learn more about this program and we'll see if this is a good fit for you or not.
See if there's chemistry.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
It's an odd date.
TerryHuberman.com, TerrieHuberman. I highly recommend it, folks. Okay. This makes so much sense when it's laid out like this. And you know, that theory that we always think that those, like the Greeks and stuff with their myths and this and that, when you were right, when you said we pat them on the head and say, weren't they cute? Yet I always wonder, were they as advanced or even more advanced than we are? And they got destroyed.
Or is some of their metallurgy and advancements and ideas that they came up with, leftover technology from, these things that came down. I mean, let's not forget one of the weirdest mysteries of all. How could the Aztecs, the Toltecs, the Mayans, the Incans, and the Egyptians all have pyramids, incredible pyramids that they created, very similar to each other in completely different parts of the world where they never could have hoped at that time to have ever known of each other's existence and are oftentimes separated by thousands of years? How could they all be building the same types of structures with no contact with each other?
And
very, very unusual.
Don't they line up with Orion's belt? The
pyramids at Giza, specifically in Egypt, they absolutely do. They line up perfectly with the belt of Orion, which, for those out there that don't know what that is, Orion is a constellation, and it's based on a hunter, right? And he has a belt and a sword in this constellation, and the belt is consisting of 3 stars. And yes, they do.
And that's
right.
The merchandise my people make, belts. That's what we do.
Right on.
But you know what's very odd? I know that sometimes I'm reaching a little bit, but I swear to God, when I was a kid, we did astrology all the time. Or astronomy all the time. And to this day, I can find Orion's belt in a second. That is the one thing I can always find when it's in the sky. Like, I see it all the time. But I was, again, Orion the warrior. There's my people fighting in the stars.
Yeah, right. That's right. Yeah, even in the stars, he's got to fight off. Yeah, I would love to. I'd love to know the story of why these people are constantly getting knocked around by other races. That's funny.
Probably a drinking problem, I'm guessing.
Or their planet has some amazing, mineral or something, or right. Spice. Who knows?
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is just. It's so fascinating. So and this is odd. I'm an offshoot again. Did I hear this or read this somewhere that, or did you say this, that our government has logged something like 300 different types of aliens? Am I off on my?
Yeah. I mean, I might have mentioned that in one of the previous episodes. It was just so funny to me. And again, for the audience out there that might even be paying attention to what I said before, I do sometimes forget the number that this gentleman said, but that was when I was doing the Disclosure Project with Dr. Stephen Greer, and we had a whole bunch of military and government witnesses to extraterrestrial phenomenon. And one of the gentlemen, Clifford Stone, who was a sergeant in the military, he was part of a group called Moon Dust and Blue Fly, and those projects, basically, their job was whenever an extraterrestrial vehicle crashed on Earth or was forced down by our technology on purpose, these guys would move in and turn it into a fake chemical spill or radiation problem, or and they would get the public away from the scene, and then they would retrieve the technology and then cart it off to whatever underground warehouse. But he was asked at Washington, D.C. during a press conference, what do these aliens look like? And his answer was really great. And again, please forgive me, I forgot the number that he said, but he said something to the effect of, when he left the project back sometime in the 70s, there was, and I can't remember what he said, it was dozens, but I think he said something like 50 or 60 or 70 different alien species that had already been identified by these groups. So take it for what it is, folks, but super interesting to think about, right?
Right. It's there's a joke there somewhere about Alabama, but I've missed it. Okay. So
Totally.
they make slaves that are mining gold for them.
Sure, and then the Sumerians are pretty specific, right? So eventually, the Anunnaki, they start to like the humans, and they're fond of them, and they're even attracted to them, and they actually start to even mate with them. And so this creates all kinds of issues. And then there's political turmoil and split factions. What should we do with these mutants that we've created? Some of the scientists and other parts of the Anunnaki community were saying this is disgusting. Let's just flood the whole thing and get out of here and just leave it behind. And so there are references to a great deluge or flood, and even inferences that it was somehow intentionally caused to just basically flush the world of humankind. But of course, man did find a way to survive and is still here to this day, so on and so forth. So,
and that has some of it's very interesting because I think Christianity, well, maybe the Muslim, most older religions always have that's an issue of even jinn mating with humans or gods mating with humans.
Yeah.
And we're the only ones.
The stories, the creation stories are so similar amongst ancient cultures that, again, have never run into each other, right? Weren't even in the same geographical region or time period that oftentimes. And it's always, the star people or whoever came down from the sky and gave us help and or technology and assisted, and oftentimes, would even rule and or act pretty horribly in some cases, and then just kind of disappear eventually, right? I don't know, when they got bored. I have no idea. So, yeah. The Kachi, right? That's the star people in Native American mythology. And it just goes on and on. Sure.
And so Native American people have that same story.
Yes, the Kachi. Yeah, that's the star people that came down, of course. Yep.
Wow. And so how do they use religion or ideas to keep...
Kachina dolls. Yeah, you've seen them. Sorry. Anyway.
I haven't seen the Kachina dolls.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, you might have even have seen them and not realized it. Kachina, and I might be saying it wrong, but oftentimes when you go into a gift shop or something, or you go to a museum, you'll see dolls or small figures that look like almost like an Indian warrior. That what makes them unique is that they have almost like a helmet that they're wearing, like a warrior's helmet, and it's usually tall and wooden with slits for the eyes, and oftentimes a lot of feathers coming out. And anybody that looks it up right now, Kachina doll, I think is what they're called, you'll know what I'm talking about. And we always think, oh, that's just a Native American warrior with a headdress. But really, it's almost implied that, these are the star people that came down from the clouds. It's possible what they're looking at there is a helmet of some kind, like a breathing apparatus, because if you want to imagine that these are extraterrestrial, that could very well be the case.
And also they, I don't know if they're connected to the totem pole, but they seem to have something that looks like they would be on the totem pole. I don't know if that's a connection or I'm just doing that because of the way the artwork is.
No, you're totally right. Yeah, totem poles are a great example. Yeah, and again, they're stacked up and exactly. So and then of course it's also really fascinating once you start looking into cave paintings and things that are found inside of tombs, and you're looking at. And this is the case in India folklore too, where you're seeing these ancient paintings and drawings showing, people back then operating what looks like extremely complicated flying machines, and it's really bizarre. Where did they get that idea? Who knows, right?
Right. Also the that's a different name. So how does I know last time that I spoke with you, we spoke a little bit how religion is what kind of keeps everybody in line.
Yeah. So it's implied through the whole Sumerian, genetic manipulation thing that you want to keep these monkey hybrid gold miner race in line. And so, yes, you absolutely genetically code them, their brains, with this religion concept, which is, worship something that is higher than you, namely us, the invaders that just came down and created you, and keep in line, right? So if this were an episode of any science fiction thriller where you go to the future and there's a slave race with these, it would be the giant collars around your neck, right? That will electrocute you or blow you up if you get out of line, right?
Right. So you're supposed to be afraid.
Except in this case, it's some neurological connection grid somewhere inside your brain.
and you're supposed to be afraid, and you're supposed to be powerless to this being, correct?
For sure. Well, and look, I mean, you were afraid. I mean, honestly, if aliens landed right now in the middle of Times Square or the White House lawn or whatever, I'm sure we would be blown away even in the year 2019 and fearful and amazed and almost completely in awe. Now try to imagine landing in a, spacecraft, during the time of the Sumerians. I mean, you try to get your head around that,
Yes. And also two things. It's very interesting that, and I'm actually passing your name on to Jessa Reed, who, she actually, she says, she kind of talks to the aliens. She had a near-death experience where she woke up on the ship and they said to her, you're all done. Do you want to go back or do you want to pass on? She said, I want to come back. But she communicates with them. She talks a lot about, it's almost like the other side of this. Like, you're great at sticking with history and facts and this. And she's talking like 3D, 4D, and 5D dimensions, what we're moving into, which is a different sort of love dimension and stuff. But she always says that, I channeled the aliens. This is what the aliens told me. She has a little show called Alien School. But we also, when I talk to her, something different that we talk about is, the different races, sort of like, I don't know if I'm getting off. I know that you're really good, like I said, at sticking with facts and history and stuff, but like they talk about the reptilians that we were saying how almost you can see sometimes in people what they are. Like you can see a little bit of of that. Do you know anything about the specific races?
No, not at all. And I would only be able to speculate because, what attracted me to even, pay a little more than, mild attention to this and actually get into it and research it was when I was reading this book by Lloyd Pye. Again, it's called Everything You Know Is Wrong. It was just so fascinating to me to think, how could these people have known, again, about the stars and the moons and the planets, and how could they have known the locations of these mining operations and all that stuff? So I only know those specific stories or historical events, depending on how you want to look at it, and nothing to my knowledge was ever mentioned about, us also being descendants of other alien species. And look, I mean, here's the thing. That doesn't mean, if we assume that the Sumerian mythology is true, it doesn't mean that every single person on Earth is all just from them. This is just one tiny story on the planet Earth. So much of its history is never actually anything anyone's ever saw that's living today. So who knows, the rest of it, right?
Right. And also that is interesting that, there's sort of this is sort of an evolution thing, but all that information that I hear about reptilians and stuff like that, it's coming through mediums or people that have had experience or something, which is very interesting that our instincts, our intuition and that kind of stuff is not, I think like we've grown so far from it that people don't respect that right now, but it was or is a part of us that at one time probably led people, their instinct, like if you go back
Sure.
to when we were more instinctual. But I also have to say, now you have me look at these Kachina dolls, and they are so complex and different. And I would actually love to ask an artist if this is an artist rendition or if this is like it was said it was like this, because these are not human looking at all.
No. The common theme amongst all of them is they're always wearing some kind of a helmet that covers the entire head. You'll rarely see a mouth. It's usually just two slits for eyes. And the slits look very similar to almost like a knight's helmet, right? They look very helmet-like usually.
Right.
So really interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I'm looking at one that almost looks like the front of it looks, how in computers it's 0101, like it
Right.
almost looks like a pattern like that, like it was the computer data.
Like a binary code. How funny.
Right. Okay. So other than the Sumerians, have there been any other, like you said here, the Native Americans have like the star people. Are there a lot of sort of societies or where this came from? In other words, it's not just two stories. It's like a everywhere story.
Yeah. Oh no, for sure. Yeah. So it's everywhere. Yeah, you can hardly stop bumping into it.
And we had a weird kind of offshoot. Machu Picchu. Wait, did I say that right?
Yeah, it sounds right. Yeah.
What is that? That is like an ancient building, what is that?
I guess I don't know exactly what the structure is, only because, unfortunately, gosh, I wish I was more of a world traveler, and have been to those sites. But isn't Machu Picchu part of a stone built complex, and isn't it a temple, if I'm not mistaken? But
right,
we can certainly look it up, right? But what is it? Yeah, beyond that, you mean?
Is it a Mayan temple, or is it? Yes. Okay.
Well, we'd have to go to the library, go into the microfiche there, Karen, and then we would have to eventually slog through all kinds of rows in the Dewey Decimal System to find that, right?
And would microfiche be the evolution of the book? Is that where that came from?
Yeah. Yeah. See all the things we're learning? My God.
I know. Well, we're actually pretty close to the hour, but this is fascinating. And I always want to know, I wonder if someday we will get, well, here's where, is anyone interested in junk DNA, or did we just chuck that?
I don't know.
Is there a
it's so, and yeah. I don't know. I guess the interesting thing is, why do we have it? That's just, why do humans have junk DNA? The calling card, if you will, of, genetic manipulation, of some type of a hybrid activity or someone monkeying around, literally, pardon the pun. But, and for those at home, you don't have to look it up. I will tell you in closing here that Machu Picchu is an Incan citadel. So I was very close. Let's use the word citadel instead of temple, if we will.
Right, yes, a citadel. Okay, because I looked it up too, and I don't know if that's the one that I wanted to. All right, that's the Mayans, right?
Incan.
Okay, then I was talking about something else, something from the Mayans that I can't get in front of me right now.
That is so Orion. What you just did. I can't even tell you.
So scattered. And
now you know why, and it's annoying, and now you know why everyone is trying to kick your ass, Karen.
I know.
It just gets old. It really does.
But they need to know I go to yoga every day, and I'm packing a little heat. I got some guns here.
Nice.
I got a little muscle under this.
Right on.
Well, listen, Jeff, this was fantastic. I agree. I hear Orion's cheering as we speak. And also, before the end of the year, I want to have you back on to tell your ghost stories.
Yeah, no, got some good ones. So I would love to do that whenever you're ready. Yep.
Absolutely. Okay, so tell everybody about the series that I love.
Majestic 12?
Majestic 12.
Yeah, sure, guys. So if anyone's interested, I am doing a fun little science fiction comedy web series called Majestic 12. Majestic 12 is taking from UFO folklore. I won't go into that right now, but if you're interested, you can go on YouTube and just type in Majestic 12 web series. And each episode is only 2.5 to about 3 minutes. You can watch a whole season in, I think about 30 minutes during your lunch break. Right now we are about to post episode 10. It will end with 13 episodes. And then we'll see about going into a second season. But again, it's just a fun little laugh about a guy that is in Space Command, a secret Navy fleet of Space Command in outer space. And he's a partier, and he keeps bumping into aliens and all kinds of drama, and comedy ensues. So, yeah, I hope you'll check it out.
And it's just great. And where can they find you if they need information about losing the middle of their nose?
Where can they find me? Well, gosh, you can. Where can they find me? You can certainly post to Majestic 12. You can, yeah.
Yes.
I think that would probably be the easiest way. And you know what I'll do, Karen? On your next episode, I will get a email address that everyone can post cool questions. Right, the paranormal side of Jeff. I'll make sure and give you guys a location where you can say hi to me that way.
Great. You should get a little page or something, and you really should have a podcast, Jeff. I know.
Okay.
I've
heard it's pretty simple to do nowadays, right? We have these talking devices, and gosh, it just goes out on the airwaves pretty easily.
You know, if I can do it, anyone can do it.
Well, here's my thing. If it's more than 5 steps, I'm out. So, Karen, if you can convince me that a podcast doesn't take more than 5 steps, I am in.
All right. Well, I'll get it down a little. And you see, I have already found the way to get past that, because I give a high five out to my producer, Mike Flynn at Uno Rising Media. Everybody check out Majestic 12, the web series. It's fantastic. Remember, I got dates coming up. You can see me in Miami. You can see me in Vegas. You can see me in Michigan, the big 3. Listen, send me an email. Let me know what you like about the podcast. You can book a reading at karenrontowski.com or paranormalkaren.com. Leave me 5 stars if you can. And we'll see you next week, and we'll see Jeff soon. Thanks, everybody.